Is this Mr. Patterson? Oh, thank you for. Are you going to come visit Dinosaur Adventureland?
Maybe. Can you hear me?
We'd love to have you. I pray for you.
Your question about beneficial mutations adding information. I mean, I have an answer for that, but I'd love for you to maybe define what you mean by adding information or information in that sense.
Okay, let's just pick a number because I don't know what the right number. Let's say it takes 4 million lines of code to tell the body to produce an arm. Probably takes way more than 4 million lines of code. Just like a computer takes X number of lines of code to tell it to move the cursor or whatever it's doing. There are lines of code required to build and make an arm. Protista don't have any of those. They don't have arms. Where did all this new information come from to tell the protista to grow an arm to slowly become a human? Not just an arm, but an eye and a nose and a zillion other things. It would take probably trillions of lines of code to be added to change a protista to a human. I object to this chart being called science. It's a propaganda poster is all it is. Nothing, it's a religious poster. It's to make the kids believe, wow, it's true, I saw a line connected. They're telling us that a protista turned to everything. Lots of information would have to be added for each type of life form, whether it be an octopus or a sponge or an amoeba or a shark. Where's this new information coming from? The example Dan gave of lactose tolerance is not adding anything. It's not shutting a switch off. The switch was there.
Let's focus on that example. Okay. So the lactase tolerance mutation, the way that it's adding information is that it's the DNA sequence. It didn't just mutate randomly. It's changing in a way that changes the gene's behavior. So the genome has, how DNA has instructions on how to build a human. The genome is now having a new regulatory instruction that says keep the lactase gene turned on in adults.
No, it does not. You got it wrong. They already had the gene to digest lactose. The babies all have it. The gene tells it to shut that switch off. And that's broken. That's not new information. It's a loss. It's a loss of information.
No, that's a new instruction that came from that mutation happening. It wasn't there before. So that's new functional heritable information.
So does that, I don't understand how you can't see this. It's not shutting a switch off. That's not new information. It doesn't go in and say, don't shut the switch off. It just forgets to shut the switch off. There's not any new information. The information for the switch was already there and it didn't get tripped.
No, it wasn't. The gene has a new regulatory instruction that says to keep the lactase gene turned on in adults, whereas it didn't before. And the reason that this is beneficial is because there are environments where people might not be able to get access to food very easily, and milk is a good source of calorie and vitamin D and other nutrients.
I love it. But so still, I'd like you to study this a little further, and you come on, let's have a debate on this. Do you think that the not shutting the switch off as the creature ages, which happens in some cultures, mostly European, like they showed, Chinese can't do it, okay, 1% of Chinese. You think that is adding information? I think you're totally mistaken.
Well, if somebody is lactose intolerant and they have a mutation that then allows them to be able to drink milk, then that is a change, and that's because of a mutation, and that mutation is giving these new instructions in the genome. So that's where the new information is.
I would bet that
it didn't already have it.
Right. Babies, as far as I know, all of them can digest milk. All humans can digest milk as babies. They get to a certain age when they should be weaned off, and now the switch does not get tripped. So they can no longer digest the milk. They used to be able to. You're totally mistaken. It is not adding. I know you're desperate for evidence for your religion. I know you are, and it bothers you that I tore this one apart tonight. But get somebody in the comments, give your comments. Am I the only one seeing it? It already had the genes to digest lactose.
It's not true that all babies can digest milk. It's rare, but some are lactose intolerant.
At birth?
Yeah, when they're babies.
What do they drink to grow then? They can't chew a
Or
hamburger.
they formula.
So special formula.
Yeah, Infamil.
Okay, I'll have to do some research on that. But even then, that would be a switch not getting shut off. It's just a switch that's broken. Maybe it could be broken at birth or before birth. I don't know. But still, it's not adding information. How can they not see it?
Well, okay. Before I go, like, what do you mean by information, though?
Well, the lines
Or
of
what
code.
would be an example of adding information from a
Okay,
mutation?
if a protista, which has no arms, suddenly got the complex DNA code to grow arms, functional arms that it could use and sew or knit with, okay, or pound with. That would take a lot of new information for a protista to grow arms or legs or eyes or nose or hair. It doesn't have that. There's a lot of information.
I'm asking for a definition of information.
Guess I've never been asked that question. Knowledge or the instructions on how to build something. Does a protista have the instructions in its code to build arms? No. Do humans?
Yeah. Yes, but not until it becomes multicellular. So a single-celled organism, it can't grow arms. It's gonna. It would have to grow. So your example is ridiculous. Then you're admitting that.
Protista do not have the lines of code, the information to grow arms. Humans do. The moment they're conceived, they already got that information.
Yeah, but they might have the information to eventually develop into a full human body, but you're not going to see a single-celled protista sprout an arm. That's just ridiculous. That's all I'm saying.
That's my point. They don't
and
have
and you're making an intentionally ridiculous example because you know that would never happen. And so you're saying the only way to prove this thing to me that I'm asking for is to show something that we both know will never happen. It's just that's why I said you're stacking the deck. You've got your thumb on the scale, Kent. You're asking for something that's completely unfair. You're saying, show me this ridiculous thing that'll never happen, and that's the only way that I'll accept proof of my question. And that's slimy. It's slimy.
A protista turned into an octopus. Would you agree octopus have some bodily features that protista do not have? Would you agree that humans have some bodily features which requires information to build that a protista doesn't have? They're telling the kids the protista turned into all of this. I'm saying this is propaganda. This isn't science. But you guys want to think it's science. Lactose tolerance, the gene not getting switched off, forgetting to shut off the light, is not explaining how the switch got there, how the light got there, how the wiring got there, how the electricity got there. You guys, I think it's hopeless, AJ, but you're not getting it.
Well, the single-cell organism at the bottom of the family tree you're showing is not a protista. It's not the earliest single-celled organism that ever existed. It's Luca. It's the last universal common ancestor. So you're talking about you've got two things mixed up here, Ken.
Okay, you're calling it Luca. That does not tell. Was it a protista? Was it an amoeba? Was it a paramecium? What single pilot wanted it to be a protista? That's why I said that. What would you like this one to be?
The point I'm making is just that it's not the earliest single-celled organisms that ever existed. It's much more modern than that, and they're more developed and complex than that. So
what should go at the bottom of the family tree? What started all this? Who's your great grandpa down here, AJ?
See, that the question you're asking is that's not the very, very earliest single-celled organism.
What was? I'm asking you to tell me what was. You believe this stuff, and you think we should all be required to teach it to everybody. So I think I have a right to know who's your grandpa.
Again, like that would be the first replicating molecule that ever existed, or replicating molecules, because it wasn't just one. There's multiple that would have developed at the same time. But that protista at the bottom of your chart is not the same thing. It's much more modern than that. So you're asking to.
You got to go way before the protista, way down here. Okay, what was this first self-replicating molecule? To use that phrase, which molecules can self-replicate today?
I think all of them. Anything that's considered alive can self-replicate. Take in food.
Molecules before life got started. which molecules can self-replicate? Can a water molecule just decide to make another water molecule?
None.
How about salt, sodium chloride? Can that just make another molecule?
You're saying
None of the
before
molecules-
life. You're saying before life started, what was the self-replicating molecule? There was
Well,
none.
the-
That was the first thing that could be considered alive. The
Okay,
first
what-
self-replicating molecules on
what would
the
you call
oceans.
Well, you want to call it Luca.
No.
Life-
Luca is the last universal common ancestor of all living organisms. That
Okay.
first single-celled organism was way back, like in the evolutionary worldview billions of years ago.
Billions of years ago. Yeah, I knew you'd say that. Okay.
Well,
What was the first living organism? What would you call it? It was not a protista. It was not a bacteria. It was not an amoeba. What was it?
I wouldn't know the term for it, but we just call it
Grandpa.
the
call it
first
grandpa.
the first, if you want to call it grandpa, but that's not, that's kind of not taking it seriously.
I don't take it
Which you
seriously.
don't.
You are correct.
I know you don't. It's why you ask questions that are ridiculous.
No, that's why I point out that evolution is ridiculous. You believe.
No, you think it's ridiculous.
Okay. Has anybody ever seen any of these creatures have babies that were something? Elephants have babies. Takes 24 months gestation. Butterflies, amoeba, ants. Let's see, ladybugs. Do you know of any creatures on this chart? And they have lines connecting all of them. Can you show me an example where any creature ever in the history of humanity has produced a baby that anybody would consider a different kind of animal?
No,
it's
and
just
you
a
wouldn't
different
expect. No, and you wouldn't expect that in
Because
evolution.
it doesn't happen. That's why this chart is baloney. It doesn't happen.
Oh.
Nobody expects it. Nobody sees it. Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow. Nobody's ever seen a whale produce a non-whale or come from a non-whale. But they got the whale coming from a single-celled creature. I object to that.
That
This
doesn't
is
mean that
propaganda.
a whale gave birth to something that wasn't a whale, though.
I didn't say whales always give birth to whales.
I agree
So
with that.
Well, then great-great-great-great-great-grandpa whale produced a baby whale, and great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa had to be a whale because they don't produce anything other than their kind. God said 20 times in the first 7 chapters of the infallible Bible that they will always bring forth after their kind. That is science. That's what we've seen, observed. We got 2 cows going to have a baby up here. I bet you $10. I only got 5. I bet you $5 they're going to have a calf. When our sheep had babies a couple of weeks ago, they turned out to be baby sheep. Our goats have baby goats. Our cows have baby cows. Our chickens have baby chickens. There are simply no exceptions, AJ.
And you think evolution means that a chicken would give birth to a baby rhino? Is that what you're saying evolution says?
No,
Oh, then why did you just say the things you just said? Why did you say we have chickens and the only thing they're ever going to give birth to is a chicken?
Right.
If you're not implying that a chicken would give birth to something else. Do you see how obvious the implication is? You're just lying, Kent. You're lying.
Let's go backwards. AJ, instead of going forward, a chicken will not produce a rhino. Did all the chickens we have, did they come from chickens? Yeah. Did their grandpa come from chickens? How far back do I have to go backwards in time before it's not a chicken?
When it's jungle fowl.
Okay. Is that still a bird?
Yeah.
How far back-
See,
how far back
a
does it
chicken
go?
always gives birth to a chicken, but that chicken is going to be slightly different than its parents.
Sure, there's
And-
500
and the grandparents will, and the grandchildren chicken will be slightly different, and so on and so on, until these slight little differences add up, until eventually you get something that can't interbreed with the previous population, and eventually you might get something that seems to us a long time later that these things couldn't possibly be related because they look so different. But that's because there's been such a long time for these small changes to add up. That doesn't mean that a chicken will give birth to something that's obviously different, because evolution is a very slow process, but you don't believe or accept it in deep time. You reject it. So you'll never be able to believe that.
I'll never be able to imagine it. I just can't imagine
No.
it. Right. You guys have the wild imagination.
No, it's difficult to imagine time spans on that long of a time
Right.
period.
Impossible. Okay. So if we had billions of years going back, chicken, daddy chicken, grandpa chicken, great grandpa chicken, at some point, it was a protista, wasn't it? In your religion, yeah.
It would have shared a common ancestor with that. You don't have a direct line from chicken to protista.
They have a
Right.
direct line from protista to everything on this chart. Here's the protista producing a shark. Here's the protista producing a fish. Protista producing a dinosaur, a sunflower, a human, a lemur, a whale. It's a direct line to all of them. You guys
But
don't
you
want to.
realize that that chart is a much condensed version of how huge the scientific family tree is. It's got millions of forks and dead ends of things that went extinct and didn't produce anything. And I won't take up too much more of your time, but I would love for you to define the term produce when you say, this produced this and produced that.
That's to, have a baby. That's something.
Okay, so you're saying that that each of those animals on that chart gave birth to the one it's connected to?
Well, if you want to assume the little changes can add up, I would like to point out the variations we do see have limits. They've been trying to get
You're
cows
changing the topic now.
No, they now have a cow that gives 34 gallons of milk a day. That's the world
It's
record.
utterly ridiculous.
34 gallons is the limit. That's the record. Are they ever going to get a cow to give 4 trillion tons of milk a day? No, there's a limit. Dog breeders have been trying to get bigger dogs and smaller dogs. They got one now 4 inches tall, so a teacup chihuahua. Will they ever get a dog a 1/4 inch tall? No, there's a limit. This is what you guys either don't get or won't admit. There are limits to these variations. Yes, the variations happen. When animals produce babies, they're a variety, but they're still obviously the same kind. A dog and a wolf and a coyote are the same kind of animal. They're not a banana. So the information to change the protista or amoeba or protozoa, whatever eukaryotic single-cell creature you want to start with, to change from that to a human, you have to add arms, legs, eyes. You have to add lots of things. Protista don't have a lot of things that humans have. So why do we have a chart showing protista connected to a human? Over trillions, quadrillions, quintillions of generations.
There was a time when you were a single cell, Kent, and you have arms now. So
right. Now that's a
all
good
I'm going
example.
to say.
That single cell zygote had the code already in the DNA to make arms. The protista does not. The human zygote, fertilized embryo, has the code. That's why I'm saying, where's this code coming from to add arms to the protista? It doesn't have it. The human embryo does. It already got the code. And the switch to shut off lactose tolerance is not adding information. It's forgetting to shut a switch off. Okay, you guys need to go back and watch this program one more time, maybe 2 more times in your case, and see if you can get it. I just simply pointed out the lactose tolerance that Simon Dan gave is not an example that's going to turn a protista to anything else, because it's only forgetting to shut off a switch that was already there. It didn't add the switch. It forgot to shut it off. I think most of my viewers are getting this.
Well, they tend to believe anything you say, so.
They're all dumb. Yeah, let me translate that.
I didn't say they were dumb.
Oh, you're implying that.
Well, no, I just think all I'm saying is you've built a loyal following and they trust what you say. They see you as an authority figure. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
Well, I'm right. You know that.
You should be proud of that.
Okay. All right. That's it. Anybody else? I'm ready to go to bed, Brad. I've had a long day. AJ, come over here, visit Dinosaur Adventureland. We'll feed you, house you, treat you like royalty, and have a debate if you'd like. Show you real science in our science center. It's pretty cool. We can show you our cows. They always have baby cows. Everyone.